I learned pretty quickly that in pop music, your chords can make or break the entire track. For years, I was basically guessing my way through chord progressions. The real shift happened when I started paying attention to the chord patterns that top producers and writers actually use, and of course, the techniques to enhance them. So if you're chasing that beautiful, mesmerizing pop sound, I'm confident these 7 chord patterns and techniques will level up your tracks instantly. So let's dive in. Technique number 1, the add 9 lift. Take your existing chord progression and add the 9th as a constant top note or extra layer across the entire loop. I want to show you an example of this using the Chainsmokers track Closer. Here's just the piano with the chords on the screen. There's a really nice guitar part that pops in and out of this track, and it really leans on that 9th note going back and forth with the tonic. So this is what it sounds like. And so while this is in a minor key, we can look to the relative major and choose the 9th of that scale. That one note can soften the harmony and gives your progression that warm, nostalgic lift that you hear in modern pop. But if you want to take that lift and turn it into something even dreamier, that's where technique number 2 comes in, the anti-tonic loop. If you're in a minor key, try building your chord progression around chord 6 for a dreamy, hypnotic feel. So a great example of this is Sabrina Carpenter's Chem. We'll show you the chords in isolation. This particular progression keeps the tonic as something you kind of visit occasionally, but not necessarily live on. It avoids that obvious home chord and gives you a sort of floating, cyclical tension. But of course, even some of the dreamiest chord progressions need the right resolution, which brings us to technique number 3, the plagal cadence. Most producers don't think too much about how they're ending their chord progressions, but in some cases, your resolution is everything. Instead of a strong 5-1, use the softer and, in my opinion, much cooler plagal cadence, which goes from chord 4 to chord 1. So I want to show you a great example of this in Olivia Rodrigo's Traitor. Have a listen to the very last chord and how it resolves back to chord 1. If we have a look at the voice leading for this cadence, it lines up perfectly. You get that really nice resolution from the 4th to the 3rd, which sounds like this, just those last 2 chords. It's just a really satisfying resolution back to chord 1, and I actually think it's what makes this track work so well. Technique number 4, the major to minor 4 switch. In a major key, take chord 4 of the progression and flip it into a minor chord. That one note shift is that emotional drop that you may have already heard in a few songs. So I want to show you just an iconic example of this in Radiohead's Creep. Here's the example. So to me, that minor 4 chord really gives that progression so much depth and emotion. They do a similar technique only with chord 3, where they turn it from a minor chord into a major chord. But sometimes the most emotional moment in a track is where one thing doesn't change at all. Which brings us to technique number 5, the one note pedal. Keep just one note constant while the chords move underneath. In this case, as a more versatile and universal technique, I recommend using the 1st, 5th, or both of the tonic major scale. Hold that single note often in the top voice and let everything else shift around it. And a really great example of this is Olivia Rodrigo's Driver's License. Here's a quick example. Using the 1st of the scale as that pedal tone really glues the harmony emotionally and really gives the vocals a perfect place to sit. One thing that you can try with this is omitting the 3rd of each chord and just allowing the pedal tone and the bass alone to imply whether or not it's major or minor. A great example of that technique, again, is Selena Gomez's Lose You to Love Me. This is what it sounds like. And if you want even more color in your chords, that brings us to technique number 6, color tones. Instead of adding extra notes inside your chord voicings, try playing a separate melodic idea that floats over the chord progression. I also call these spice notes, using the 1st, 2nd, 5th, 9th, and 11th of the scale. And of course, it can be any combination of those notes. You can even pick the odd note outside of those, but the idea is to give your progression a completely different feeling without adding too many extensions to each chord. So Birds of a Feather by Billie Eilish is a fantastic example of this. Each note of that melodic idea feeds into the chord progression. If we look at the chord progression in isolation, it sounds like this. So it really just doesn't have the same effect without it. And don't forget that melodic ideas like this also build the identity of a track and can really set them apart. And so to make all of these chords feel professional and intentional, we move on to technique number 7, inversions. Where possible, aim for no jumps and no clunkiness. Use 1st and 2nd inversions to minimize movement between chords. These small shifts can make a massive difference. A really good example of this is Justin Bieber's Sorry. If we have a look at the chord voicings, they're all fairly close together. Each voice leads into the next without a massive jump. So if this chord progression were to look slightly different, it's just a matter of selecting some of those perhaps bottom or top notes of the chord and flipping them up or down until you get something that's really smooth. So if, for example, this bass note were all the way up here and maybe, this second note here, really, really random, lots of massive jumps between voices, it's not an absolute deal breaker, but of course you won't get that sort of smooth, refined sound that you might be after, and it'll just be a lot nicer for a vocalist to sing over if that voice leading is nice and smooth. So typically if I'm in a situation like this where I feel things look maybe a little bit clunky, I'll start just by swapping out where some notes go, just literally selecting it in Ableton, selecting Shift and the downward arrow. And this is without having to sort of register the theory side of it, because while that is useful, sometimes honestly just sort of playing it out by ear, switching up notes where necessary to make those voices just a little bit closer together, trying to avoid massive leaps, unless of course they sound cool, could hopefully make your chord progressions that much better. See if you can get that voice leading a little bit smoother, and if you've never done anything like that before, I'm sure you'll be stoked with the result. If you found this video helpful and you want to keep leveling up your productions, check out this video here. I think you'll really enjoy it. And if you want more personalized help with your productions and songwriting, you can also apply for my coaching using the link below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.